African father in America. Tujikaze, tujikaze, jikaze. Tujikaze, tujikaze, jikaze. African father in America. Tujikaze, tujikaze, jikaze.
You are listening to African Father in America podcast by Simon Javanokelo, live from Seattle, Washington, USA.
Greetings, everybody. My name is Simon Javanokelo, and I'm truly privileged to be here with you today. You're listening to the African Father in America podcast. Right now, I'm truly honored to be with my brother, Omari Salisbury, my brother from another mother. Omari is a journalist, head of marketing, strategy, communication, public relations, and world traveler. Omari, how many countries have you been to? 50 something?
Yeah, close to 60, just under 60.
Yeah, man. And my brother Omari is based in Seattle, but he spent a lot of time in East Africa and really close to 60 countries, as he has said. But today I really want us to deepen our understanding of Omari's story, especially your upbringing. I was watching a video that on YouTube recently that was taken in 1995 in relation to an incident that you and some of your brothers had, where very similar to how the police is treating other black men right now. And it just really humbled me to see how long you've been interacting with the brutality that the police system is presenting, especially to the black community. So I just wanted you to share with us, your story from, when you were young, between 10 and 15, how, being brought up in Seattle looked like during that time.
Yeah, well, I mean, so it was very fantastic because the Central District, which is really gentrified right now, the Central District, the neighborhood was about 80% black, if not higher. So, black businesses, black restaurants, black drugstores and everything else. So to be at that age growing up in the Central District was fantastic. But there was also a time where, our neighborhood was over-policed. And, we dealt with a lot of continuous police issues that were there. There was also crack epidemic going on. So, but, I had a great childhood in the Central District, and then, went on to James A. Garfield High School, what I'm saying? So, those were just really, really, really good years for me. And, even though that the incident with the police occurred back when I was 15 or 16, still went on to graduate from Garfield High School and move on to college and, and everything else. But very fantastic years in the Central.
Right. So, right now we're also looking at, this Central District being, transformed in different ways, especially because of gentrification. And, I see, our brother White King standing up and coming up with very, forward-thinking ways of preserving the culture, preserving the land, and building, black wealth. Could you just talk to me a little bit about some of the people that you remember growing up with that are now having an impact, not only in your life, but also in the community?
Well, outside of my family, it was been very impactful. Somebody that I think of is Louis Rudd. Louis Rudd is the founder of co-founder of Ezel's Famous Chicken. I was a small kid when Ezel's opened up in 1984, right across the street from Garfield High School, and to see what Louis and the guys at Ezel's have done over the last 35 or 36 years. They've set the bar very high as far as black business owners who care about the community, but also expanding their business. I think he's got like 17 locations. Wow. But he's also a mentor. I can call Louis at any time. He's always got a minute for me. He's always willing to be open and to discuss. So, just off the top of my head, that's somebody that I saw growing up, and who still commitment remains in the community and is an outstanding role model.
Right. Man, I worked in South Sudan and right after the war,
Right.
and I was there when the landmines were just being removed. And you know, recently I was watching. I was awake at night and I was watching a video of the recent, the recent killing of two activists that happened in your presence. And it killed my spirit, man. And I just heard your voice and how you manage the whole situation, and you're still able to bring yourself together and document it. And just the commitment to the community, and your journalism ethics is just outstanding. And I just wanted you to share with me why you started or created Converge Media. Just talk to me about the how it was a dream, and why it's the force that is really keeping us informed right now.
Well, I guess you could say I started off my journalism career at Garfield High School. I was a writer for the Garfield Messenger many moons ago. Worked for a few different media companies, some fairly large ones in America. But to be honest with you, what shaped my tenacity and my capacity and capabilities is the time that I spent in East Africa, of all places. Went over to Tanzania 16 years ago and caught up with quite a few of the right people at the right time. Joseph Kusaga of Clouds Media Group. At the time, it was just Clouds FM, years ago. And now people realize Clouds is very big across East Africa and even other continents. In spending the time there with Clouds and with a few other companies, Push Mobile, I knew that when I returned home that I wanted to take all the skills that I had learned and bring them back home here to Seattle. I think that a lot of people who are in media, who are here from the US and they're watching things, they don't realize how hard that business is on the continent.
Yeah.
Hard. Just in the fact that you wake up, it might be power, might not be power. The phone might be on, might not be on. Is the phone out of credit? Is the road open? Or is the police gonna shake you down? You know what I'm saying? Is the satellite up? Is there power in the generator? You know what I'm saying? Maybe equal. There's so many things before you ever get to your desk. Then when you get to your desk, you type something. There's no network printer. You might have to go to an internet cafe to print. And so when you've gone through that process years after years after years and everything else, very slow internet. You can't even move a file. Some stuff you have to send through DHL just because there's not a big enough internet capacity to send something from Tanzania to Kenya. So you have to put it on a plane. Just to send a file between Nairobi and Dar es Salaam and things like that. When those struggles sharpen you, and it makes you so sharp. And so using that life experience, my last experience there was launching Clouds TV in Abu Dhabi, and that's the first and only Black-owned TV station in that part of the world, serving 43 countries. And you wouldn't believe how incredibly difficult that process was. So it's a lot of tenacity that I learned, man. I tell people all the time, I grew up in East African media houses. I grew up working with East African ad agencies and everything else. And that commitment of people, everybody knew they had to be so excellent. Because how could things ever move if you didn't have the commitment and the excellence and everything else? And so, Converge is very much a reflection of the very outstanding media and ad agency and journalism professionals that I came across in Tanzania, Kenya, Uganda, Rwanda, and a few other places. But when I came back to Seattle, I knew that I wanted to take this cumulative knowledge that I gained from my experience across Africa and other places, and be able to develop a platform that was about us meaning like Black people. And so some people look at, there's big platforms, BET, there's the Black News Channel and everything else. Our focus was just the Northwest. How can we create a content platform for Black or people of color in the Pacific Northwest to be able to, who create content, for it to be able to be distributed and monetized. So that was the whole goal, just kind of using that work ethic and some of the tricks of the trade that I picked up along the way, and that was the emphasis of starting Converge.
And for me, Converge has really changed how news is consumed, not only here, but nationally and also globally. Whenever people reach out to me, people are reaching out to me all the time. What's going on in Seattle? Are you guys starting another country over there? I share with them your videos. I share with them Converge, content that you've been posting, and nobody asks me a question again, because then they can follow on their own. There are even people in LA, in Ghana, that were reaching out, and I shared with them some of your work. And I remember you being in the front line the moment the Seattle protest started, and you've been documenting and telling these stories until now. Could you just paint for me a picture, for the sake of the listeners of the African Father in America podcast who have never been to Seattle, a picture of how it started and where you think it's going?
Well, the protests in Seattle actually started days later than other parts of the city, the other parts of America. The first protest here was Friday, May 29th. And then the Saturday, the 30th, there was big protest downtown. There was a lot of people who actually came to tear stuff up. So you had some people who came to actually riot and things like that, as well as that they were, of course, outnumbered by peaceful protesters. But it was a busy day downtown Seattle. Several police cars got caught on fire and everything, and it kind of mirrored some of the protests that we saw all across the rest of America. But that Sunday, I think all the people who intended to do harm had left the city for the most part, and you had a lot of peaceful protests that were occurring. And the peaceful protesters were marching all over the city, and they marched through, and they didn't have an issue. But whenever they would come up to the East Precinct, the officers would not let them pass the precinct. And so that Sunday, they got turned around a few times from the East Precinct. They got turned around. And the next day, though, the protesters came back double the size. And the police again put up a barricade. And at that point, it was a standoff between the police and the protesters. And one thing led to another. An officer grabbed the umbrella from a protester. The protester grabbed the umbrella back. And I'll be honest with you, from there, my friend, all hell broke loose. And I was right there on the front end. And that's where the tear gas came out. The pepper spray came out, and it was something that really people in Seattle, in a residential neighborhood, had never seen before. I mean, it was serious business, man. And then the next day, it was the same thing. Basically, the protesters said all they wanted to do, what they were saying, was pass peacefully in front of the precinct. They're like, hey, these are our streets. We should be able to pass through. The police didn't believe that the protesters. They didn't believe that the protesters would pass through and not try to harm the precinct, because a week earlier, precinct number 3 in Minneapolis was burned down, and so they refused to let the protesters pass by the precinct. And so the next day, the protesters were there that Tuesday, and again it was tear gas, pepper spray, and then rubber bullets. And I actually got shot by 2 rubber bullets, on that day. And so every day, the protesters kept coming back. And now, because this was occurring in a residential neighborhood, you had some people who weren't even a protester. They were in their apartment, but tear gas got in the apartment, and maybe their kids breathed the tear gas. So now they coming out to protest. You see what I'm saying? Or when the police were shooting rubber bullets, the bullet might have hit somebody who didn't have anything to do with the protest, but now they're protesting. And so the protest gained momentum every single day. And then on the 8th day, the mayor, for reasons best known to her, decided to have the police abandon the precinct. Right. And then once the police left the area, that's when the protesters basically filled the void. They created an area that first was called Chaz and then Chop. And that lasted for about 2 weeks. And then the police stayed away. They stayed out of the area.
Right.
Emergency services stayed out of the area.
Right.
And then after 2 weeks, eventually the Seattle Police Department cleared the area. And so there is a sense of normalcy back here on Capitol Hill. I'm actually here talking to you in the area formerly known as the Chop.
Wow. My brother, thank you. Just seeing how, you've been the eyes of so many people, and we've extended, we've extended the length of your lenses so that they reach as far as possible, so that we can help people understand what's going on here. But another important thing that I would love for us to discuss is you and I are fathers too, and recently I saw on your Instagram when you're giving a shout out to the young
Yeah.
and the African Father in America podcast was inspired to, I created it as a result of the suicide rate in the Kenyan community here in the Pacific Northwest, all the way until Vancouver. There's a Kenyan brother who shot Sauti Sol. When Sauti Sol came to Seattle, that brother shot the behind the scene videos. He was a Kenyan living here. In fact, he was in the Navy. Then he moved to Vancouver when Trump became president, and he committed suicide there this February, right before the lockdown. So, man, so people have been reaching out to me, Simon, you have 3 kids. You've been with your wife for 11 years. How are you doing it? So I've participated in weddings and funerals, but this one was so close to home because Philip was a brother that if you saw him, you can trust him with your money. He looks good, gentleman. So I love to just discuss what fatherhood means to you, because you're a hardworking, loyal father, and I was really, really impressed to see, how your son looks so much like you.
Ask him though; he'll tell you he definitely looks better than me. But I think that it's the best thing that ever happened to me is fatherhood. I've got 2 daughters and 1 son. My oldest daughter is 23. My son is 19. My youngest daughter is 10 years old. And for me, one of the biggest things, especially for my older kids, because that's kind of where I was in life at that time, is they spent so much time with me. And that means they spent a lot of time over there on the continent of Africa, and I mean, I tried to take them everywhere that I could go, or that I could take them if they weren't in school. At one point, my son went to school over in Tanzania for a while, things like that. But I mean, for me, man, I always say that, my kids keep me always trying to make the very best decisions that I can, to try to lead by example in everything else. And I mean, man, they're really the motivation for me. It's a lot of days, man. Even covering this story, I don't feel like getting out of bed. My body hurts. I'm tired. And then I hear my son say something like, "Man, Dad, I mean, what you're doing out here is," he'll say, like, "it's amazing," or "we're making a difference," and things like that. And hear your kids kind of be so supportive and on board and everything else, then it gives a lot of motivation. And I'll be fortunate. I'll be honest. I've been fortunate that these kids, I mean, man, they've just grown up to doing everything they're supposed to do. I've never had a lot of problems that some of my other friends have had in regards to their children and things. And I don't know if it's parenting style. I don't know if it's a blessing from God, but I'm just thankful for it. That they've always just kind of done what they're supposed to do, and I mean, definitely a blessing.
Right. A lot of the time, people also say that Black fathers are absent, Black fathers are lazy, and one of the things I would love to do is to also change that narrative by sharing stories like yours and mine. And there are a lot of fathers that are not lazy or absent, but they don't just share their story enough, and people don't just know that they're doing great and their best. But I wanted to just get your perspective around that. Do you think that perception is the reality?
No, I mean, well, of course it's not the reality. I mean, that's just like there's so many amazing and outstanding things about Black people and Black culture here in America that we don't really hear about. I mean, you got to think there's 117 historically Black colleges and universities. Most of them full of students. But you hear about a small percentage of people who are in jail and prisons and things like that. Imagine that thousands, tens of thousands every year, Black people graduating from college, going to medical school, law school, and doing this and that and everything else. I think that it's important that people are intentional about the media content that they consume. When I was a kid, and definitely when my mom was younger, there was only 3 or 4 different channels, ABC, NBC, and CBS, the evening news. Then you had the big paper, you had something like the Seattle Times and the New York Times. Imagine all the different media content outlets. I mean, even your podcast right here. You see what I'm saying? This is something that didn't exist 20 years ago.
That's true.
So somebody can be intentional about finding out about Black fatherhood in America because of all the media that's out there. So, I mean, what I would say is that the mainstream media has never had our best intentions in heart.
True.
That's why we had Ebony magazine and Jet magazine and Black newspapers like the Chicago Defender and things like that. And here in Seattle, the Facts and the Medium, because we've never been able to depend upon white media to tell a true and accurate story about our greatness.
It's true.
And 100%. 100%. That's how Radio 1 started, even BET started, because we can never depend upon them to give an honest representation of our greatness. Yes. And so, I mean, of course, the story of the Black father isn't told in the mainstream because it's a powerful story. Right. We have our faults just like any community, for sure. But, there's millions of Black men out there who are trying every day, give their best every day, provide for their children and are part of their community every day. Right. You can go, wait till football season if it comes around this year. Go to any Little League football park anywhere in America and look at all them Black men out there coaching. You know what I'm saying? Coaching those young kids, those role models. There's a gentleman named Terrell Elmore here in Seattle, coaches the CD Panthers, been there for 20 years, coaching 8-year-old children, 20-year commitment. And that's what I'm saying. And those are the stories that never really make it out. And there's Terrell Elmores all over America who every day for decades show up for our young people, not only for their own kids, but for all these kids in our community. And I think that we have to be intentional about the media that we decide to consume. If it can't show us a positive representation of ourselves, then very well we might need to change the channel. That's true.
My brother, right now, if we go back even 2 months ago when Ahmaud Arbery was killed when he was going for a run, and then the late George Floyd was also killed, and the list continues to go on. There's a lot of trauma even for brothers that are far from the actual incident. And I just wanted you to share with me how you think Black men and Black fathers can support each other, even virtually, some of the ways that you continue staying resilient.
Well, the thing is I think that a lot of other people, they have an advantage, at least over me, is because, being a journalist in this and being as fair as I can be to all sides of this issue. I've had to pack my feelings around George Floyd away. I did an interview where someone asked me about how do I feel about George Floyd, and then I realized I actually teared up in the interview. And I realized, and what I told them was, I said, I don't know how I feel right now. I said, I know that how I feel, if I let it out, would impact my reporting. You see what I'm saying? It would impact my ability to really do my job, because it was such a dramatic and traumatic blow to humanity. And I think that's why you see humanity, as in all over the world, people were like, this is unacceptable. What I would say is this, though, is that, man, it's important that fathers and sons and community, they talk about this. One thing that I've seen here in Seattle is in the area of the protest, there's still a memorial wall and a candlelight vigil. And we found that thousands of people who weren't protesters or weren't for this cause or against that cause They go to that memorial wall and they'll light a candle and they'll look at the wall, because all of us felt that loss to our humanity.
Right.
And so you'll find it, and it's important though. I think it's important as excuse me, it's important as Black men and with our children, that we give space to be able to discuss. We give space to be able to grieve. You know what I'm saying? Unfortunately, a lot of Black people, especially Black fathers, the age of Black fathers, they know far too many people. You know what I'm saying? Who maybe been killed at the hands of police, maybe been killed on black violence, maybe they've committed suicide. Either way, no matter what, you know what I'm saying? That's a loss to us all. And we have to be able to discuss that honestly. You know what I'm saying? We got to be able to shed some tears, you know, and I've shed quite a few, usually by myself late at night. Yeah. And for just even what we've seen here throughout these protests, some of the things have just been horrific. But man, I would advise, and unfortunately I'm not following my best advice right now because of the nature of my job and what I'm trying to achieve here. But I would advise people, man, have these conversations. It's okay. Let's talk about it. And let's talk about a better America and a better Seattle. You know what I'm saying? Let's truly be what we've always aspired to be.
Thank you so much. How can people connect with you and stay connected with you beyond our conversation today?
Right. Well, you know, I mean, so I'm real active on Twitter these days, and that's at OMARISAL. So that's at Omari Saul. And then, you know, our website is whereweconverge.com. And we have a very big presence on Facebook as Converge Media. But then one other thing is on our Instagram and Twitter, WW Converge. So, you know, people can check me personally at Omari Saul, OMARISAL, or you can follow Converge at WW Converge.
Thank you so much, my brother. Now, is there any question I didn't ask you, anything that you want to share before we wrap up? We are coming to the end of our conversation today.
Well, there's nothing I want to ask you, but there is something I wanted to say.
Right.
I know you're from Kenya.
Yes, brother.
and I just, you know, many years ago, you know, I fell in love with a woman from Kenya, and unfortunately, you know, she tragically died. You know what I'm saying? Just a tragic accident or whatever. And it's like, man, Kenya, the country of Kenya, the people of Kenya, the work ethic of Kenya. I mean, and this woman, she stayed on me. She used to, because, you know, it's that Kenyan work ethic. And, it has to be perfect. We have to work hard. And I'd be like, man, are we friends or not? Because you're just always on my head. This Kenyan woman, you know what I'm saying, made me a better media professional because of the way that she pushed me and the high level of excellence and everything else. So I just wanted to tell you that, man, the country of Kenya, the people of Kenya, you have a special place in my heart. You know what I'm saying? Nakupenda sana.
Asante. Asante sana ndugu yangu. Jioni njema. Thank you.
Father in America. Tujikaze, tujikaze, jikaze. Tujikaze, tujikaze, jikaze. African father in